Hello, my name is Martin. I am studying English language and culture, and I would like to share my experiences with you. This is the story of how I ended up living in Sydney and how I met an inspiring teacher. I hope you will find it useful for practicing English as you follow my journey. It was a bright morning at the start of autumn when I was traveling on a bus. Two people sat beside me, talking in English. I tried to catch some of their conversation, but it was difficult because my English was still at a beginner level. However, I was determined to improve, so I mustered the courage to say hello. I used simple phrases like "How are you?" and "Where are you going?" Surprisingly, they understood me, and our small exchange made me happy. I explained that I wanted to speak English more fluently, and they told me they were from Australia. They were returning from a seminar in my city. We talked for about 10 minutes until my stop came, and before I left, they wrote down their contact details and said I could visit them in Sydney if I ever had the chance. That invitation filled me with excitement. After that meeting, I focused on my English every day. I translated short articles, watched online videos, and tried to learn new words. My progress was slow at first, but after about 4 months, I noticed real improvement. Still, I felt I could do more, so I made the bold decision to go to Sydney for a language course. Once I arrived, I enrolled in a local language school. My first class began on Monday morning. Our teacher, who introduced herself as Ms. Harris, was young, energetic, and patient. She welcomed us warmly and asked each student to talk briefly about themselves. She wanted to gauge our general knowledge of English. Ms. Harris explained that she would teach us through an approach that was very engaging. Instead of relying solely on textbooks, we would immerse ourselves in English through consistent, everyday use. I liked this idea because I never enjoyed memorizing grammar rules from standard textbooks. Ms. Harris then posed a question: why do we learn any language? Her answer was that language is our primary tool for communication. We need it to express ideas, share our stories, and connect with other people. Therefore, the best way to learn English is to use it in real-life scenarios as often as possible. We would spend plenty of time speaking, listening, and interacting with each other in English. Many students, she noted, put too much emphasis on memorizing lists of words or studying advanced grammar, but they do not practice actually speaking. While vocabulary and grammar are important, you should internalize them through daily conversation. This was the philosophy of our course, and I found it both simple and refreshing. After our teacher explained this method, we introduced ourselves more thoroughly and discussed various topics. We talked about our favorite free time activities, taking turns to speak in pairs, or sometimes addressing the entire group. I enjoyed the class immensely. It was a relaxed but productive environment, and I could already feel my confidence growing. The approach was working well for me. Chapter 2: How I Learned Vocabulary. The next day, Tuesday, One of the students asked a question that really interested me. She said she struggled with acquiring new words and wondered what the most effective strategy might be. Ms. Harris mentioned that various methods exist, but statistics show the most proven strategy is reading. People who read regularly absorb new vocabulary much faster than those who do not read. Ideally, you should read for at least 30 minutes every day. Then our teacher detailed how to get the most out of reading. First, she said, choose reading material that truly interests you, whether it is a novel, an informative article, or even an online forum, as long as it captures your attention. That way, you do not get bored or discouraged. If the book or text is too challenging and filled with unknown words, you might become frustrated. It is best to pick something that is engaging and slightly above your current level, so you stay motivated. Ms. Harris advised us that whenever we come across a new word, we should pause briefly and look it up in a dictionary. That way, we understand the text better, and we also have a higher chance of remembering this word for the future. Writing it down is optional. If you focus on understanding it clearly in context, you will likely recognize it again and recall its meaning. Reading also shows you how new words link together in sentences, providing natural examples of correct grammar and phrasing. Ms. Harris encouraged us to give this a try. After we discussed vocabulary, we talked about our plans in Sydney and the part-time opportunities available to students. I was personally curious because I wanted to find a job to earn some extra money while studying. A classmate recommended I visit a local job center. After class, I went straight there, told the staff I was an international student, and asked what positions might be suitable. The receptionist listed a few possibilities, like working as a sales assistant or a barista in a cafe. She said it would be good practice for my English, and that the required training was not overly difficult. We set up an appointment for me to start on Friday. I felt excited to have a chance to earn an income and also improve my speaking skills by interacting with customers. Ms. Harris's reading tip stuck with me, so I made sure I spent about 30 minutes each evening reading something in English, whether it was an article about local news or a short story online. On Wednesday, we returned to class, and one of the quieter students, a man from Vietnam, asked Ms. Harris for advice on pronunciation. He said he understood English fairly well, but found it challenging to speak because he lacked confidence in his accent. He felt shy about speaking publicly when he was not sure if others would understand him. Ms. Harris introduced a simple but powerful technique called shadowing. She explained that when you speak any language, you use certain mouth muscles. If your native language uses different mouth movements, your English accent might sound off. While perfect native pronunciation is not necessary, most people will still understand you. There is a way to improve clarity and confidence. Shadowing. This involves listening to a native speaker, such as in a video or audio recording, and then repeating aloud exactly what you hear, trying to match the rhythm, intonation, and mouth movements as closely as possible. It is like how children learn their first language, by imitating their parents over and over. Ms. Harris showed us a video about shadowing, and we practiced for a few minutes in class, repeating short sentences in unison with the speaker. She mentioned that this technique is also great when preparing for a presentation or any situation where you need clear pronunciation. If you do 10 minutes of shadowing before you present, you might notice your speech is significantly smoother and more natural. Before the lesson ended, I asked about extracurricular activities at the school, and the receptionist told me there was a basketball team and a music club. The basketball team had practice on Wednesday evenings, so I joined them after class. I met people from Italy, Spain, Japan, and Brazil, all bonding over the sport. It felt wonderful to connect with people from different cultures, and I sensed that my time in Sydney was off to a fantastic start. I had a fun teacher, new friends from the basketball team, and an upcoming part-time job that would help me practice English with actual customers. I realized this immersion was already helping me speak more confidently. On Thursday, we welcomed a new student to class. Her name was Angelica, and she was from Italy. She had studied with Ms. Harris the previous year during a short, intensive summer course meant for complete beginners. Angelica's English now sounded very clear and fluent, so Ms. Harris commented that Angelica's school in Italy must be excellent. Angelica smiled and said she did not attend any language school at home. Instead, she focused on the learning techniques Ms. Harris had taught her: reading, shadowing, and something called thinking aloud. Angelica explained that she had started practicing daily, usually by reading novels and watching English movies. Then she mentioned thinking aloud, a method that piqued my curiosity because I had never heard of it. She said she often thought in English rather than Italian, and to reinforce it, she would speak her thoughts out loud in English, even when she was alone. Ms. Harris chimed in, saying that although it can feel strange at first, thinking aloud is extremely effective if you truly want to accelerate your speaking skills. I was open to trying new things, so I asked for more details. Angelica described how she started with very simple sentences. I can speak English. I want to get better. I will practice every day. At first, she struggled because her Italian thoughts were more complex, and simplifying them into basic English was challenging. But after some weeks, she grew accustomed to it, and one day, she found herself speaking quite naturally to an American tourist who was visiting Italy. Even though she was still at a low intermediate level, she was able to carry on a conversation without pausing to translate everything in her head. That moment convinced her to increase her use of thinking aloud. She has continued with this habit and attributes much of her improvement to it. Ms. Harris thanked Angelica for sharing her experiences. I decided I would try thinking aloud as well, despite feeling a bit silly at first. I figured if it helped me speak more fluently, it was worth a try. Ms. Harris reminded us that if we want to become truly comfortable in English, we should read, listen, think, and speak as much as possible, aiming for about 40 minutes of each activity daily. She also said we could use short, simple videos or stories in English, and then practice shadowing their audio. It was good advice, and I made a mental note to reorganize my schedule to include reading, shadowing, and thinking aloud, in addition to my new part-time job and basketball practice. After class, I felt more inspired than ever. Life in Sydney seemed brimming with opportunities to improve my language skills. The course itself was interactive, encouraging us to participate in real communication. My job at the cafe would push me to speak English naturally. Basketball practice would let me meet new friends from diverse backgrounds, and the techniques I was learning reading, shadowing, thinking aloud would help me systematically develop my vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation. I remembered Ms. Harris saying, "Language is a tool for communication, so always think about how you can use it in daily situations." She was right. Every day, I had countless opportunities to speak, listen, and engage with people around me. In the coming weeks, I plan to continue combining my school lessons, job experience, and personal study habits. I was finally starting to see how a language truly gets learned, not just by studying rules, but by living and breathing the language whenever possible. This was the essence of the method that helped Angelica go from a beginner to an advanced speaker. I wanted to follow a similar path. If you are also looking to improve your English, the same strategies can work for you. Read a lot, listen as much as possible, speak every day even if it feels awkward, do some shadowing to refine your accent, and practice thinking aloud to internalize the language. Consistency is key. Thanks to my teacher's guidance and the example of my classmates, I found a sense of direction and motivation. My journey had only just begun, but I felt confident that if I kept using English daily and tried these proven techniques, I would achieve real fluency. And that is the heart of this story. With the right methods, a willingness to practice, and a dash of courage, anyone can become a confident English speaker.